Well, good evening, everybody. Really appreciate everybody joining us on a rainy Wednesday evening here in South Jersey. My name is Mike Sulman, proud founder of South Jersey Forward. And one of the great things about our think tank and nonprofit is I get to speak to brilliant public policy minds in the state of New Jersey. And we have three with us tonight for our roundtable on housing and economic vitality in the state of New Jersey. And clearly, this is a hot button topic for everybody. Housing has been such a big factor the last couple of years. We have some breaking news even today about interest rates, which I'm sure we'll talk about in this hour. But clearly housing is a big issue. But overall, just economic development, how housing fits into a broader economic development issue we have in the state of New Jersey, how we can grow our economy, create some jobs, continue to be competitive, not only as a state, but as a region, and particularly for South Jersey. So we have a brilliant cast of characters here and brilliant minds to talk about some of these issues tonight. And please, whether you're watching on Facebook or X or YouTube, please drop a comment, a question. We'd love to answer some while we're talking to our great group this evening. So I first want to introduce Jeff Kolakowski, CEO of New Jersey Business Builders Association. We have Doug Thompson, the CEO of the New Jersey Realtors Association, and Christina Renner, the president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce Southern New Jersey. So between the three of them, probably a bunch of degrees, accolades, very star-studded group tonight, which I greatly appreciate them joining us and all of you for watching. We're really excited to talk about them, talk with them. We're not going to talk about them. We'll talk about them after the roundtable's over.
Yeah, afterwards. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll start with Jeff. Obviously, for those of you who don't know, maybe just talk about kind of what is the New Jersey Builders Association, and we can kind of jump into how we're looking at the housing market today. So what do you do? What does the Builders Association do for some of your members?
So we're a nonprofit trade association, and we represent. I used to say the home builders, but now I say the residential construction industry because my membership, even from the kind of developer's perspective, is quite diverse. I have for sale builders, multifamily builders, home improvement contractors, remodelers, and then there's all the associated industries, occupations, and industries that are associated with building homes here in New Jersey or around the nation. Those include engineers, architects, planners, all the suppliers or manufacturers, all the products that go into making a home. It's quite a complex endeavor. So my mission is to represent all of those individuals and try to create a more healthy housing ecosystem, try to address our massive undersupply here and our affordability issues, and try to build more healthy, safe, and affordable homes here.
So where do you see that as representing the building industry? Kind of where do you see the housing market as we are today? I mean, obviously, we just saw the Fed is cutting interest rates a quarter of a percentage point, I believe. Where do you kind of see just the market overall here today when it comes to your members who are literally building the structures that we're living in?
Sure, my guys are mostly focused on kind of creating new supply here in New Jersey, right? So I could speak from that perspective. I think Doug could speak a little bit more for globally on the real estate market and what we see, including like kind of all the resales that are a huge component of the real estate market. But from the new construction market, I mean, it's tough to be a builder in New Jersey. We have a limited amount of land. We have high regulated regulatory environments here. It's costly to build. And truth be told, I could complain all day about those things, but the number one thing that's really driving our affordability crisis is a supply problem, right? It's a market imbalance thing. We have way too much demand and we don't have enough supply. And so, I mean, again, our kind of mission is to try to improve that and figure out a way to kind of change that, because as we see every day in the newspaper, there's news stories, there's articles or studies coming out on how unaffordable it is, how unapproachable home ownership, and that has massive impacts on our society, on individuals' lives, never mind the state's economic growth and potential.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue to Doug Thompson. Obviously, New Jersey Realtors Association, we all know what they do. And obviously, a lot of your members work very hard who are actually trying to, help people buy and sell homes. And I relate to a couple of years ago during the pandemic where, housing supply was so truncated. You would have, at least I did, you had realtors cold call people and say, you want to sell your house? And I said, no, thank you. But it just showed how desperate people were to try to get some new housing on the market to sell and to obviously help your members, earn a living. So from the realtor's perspective, from a real estate agent's perspective, where do you see the market right now? in South
No,
Jersey.
and first, thank you for the invite to speak today and jump on this call. I really appreciate it. So I represent 58,000 hardworking realtors across the state of New Jersey who, our main task here at the association is how do we make it easier for people to buy and sell and live in New Jersey? And, everything that goes along with that. As far as the housing market goes, we're still in one of the most difficult housing markets in the country. Unlike some of our friends in California, Arizona, Texas, Florida, who have seen just massive declines in the amount of people trying to get a home, we still have such demand, multiple offers going on properties, prices increasing. They're not seeing that in other parts of the country. And this harkens back to 2006-07 when we saw the crash happen for residential housing. Other parts of the country went in like a V, and it jumped up like that. Where New Jersey, we went in like a U. And we're starting to see that again is, we don't have those drastic changes. And that's because, we have some not only great industries here in the state of New Jersey, but we also have Philadelphia on the one side and that their marketplace. And you have New York, of course, on the other. And that just keeps New Jersey's marketplace so strong. And again, with all the industry we have, it just makes it so we don't have those same economic forces that, other parts of the country has. But I'm just looking at some of the stats here. Cape May County's median price now is $575, which is up almost 7% from last year. Atlantic is at 404. That's up 9.5% since last year. The only bright spot that I see is that we do have more listings. And I'm just looking at, just looking at Atlantic's, we have a 10% increase in listings, which is great. That means that there's more people listing and there's more opportunity for people to buy. But when I still have a 9%, 10% increase in the cost, it's pushing more and more people out of the market every day. And we're seeing now the average age of the first-time home buyer is now over 35 years of age. Where do we have those first-time home buyers being able to get in when you're waiting till 35 for your first opportunity to purchase a home? It's almost impossible. So it's very difficult times for my members trying to get people into homes. And it doesn't look like it's getting better until we can get Jeff's team to be able to build more in New Jersey and find more opportunities for people to get in the homes.
Yeah, and I'm curious, Christina, the effect, obviously, CCSNJ just celebrated 150th anniversary.
You too now? Fantastic. Thank you.
Wow, there you go. It's obviously a very historic organization in Southern New Jersey. But I am curious, kind of the effect that your members see. You represent obviously a whole swath of different interests and businesses. The effect of housing on them, where let's say you have a business that's trying to relocate, trying to expand, trying to grow, and the effect of housing has on either for them to retain employees, to get new employees here, how that affects their doing business. Talk a little bit about kind of what you're hearing just over the broader business community, how what Doug's talking about, some of those data points affect your members and them trying to get in the black, so to speak.
Sure. Thank you, first of all, Michael, for having me. And just give me a wave. My internet has been a little spotty tonight, so if there's any issues there, just let me know. But thank you for having me. As you mentioned, the Chamber of Commerce Southern New Jersey represents over 1,200 businesses of all shapes and sizes, industry types across South Jersey, from Cape May County up to Burlington County. And what we hear from the business community is they really have two top challenges as it relates to retaining and recruiting employees here in the South Jersey area. And lack of housing options is one of those two top issues, which feeds into the other top issue, which is lack of public transportation. Because if you have a shortage of housing options for employees to work, then you need a car to get from point A to point B. And we also have some of the poorest communities in the state here in South Jersey as well. Not everyone has a car. So that's an additional challenge. So when we hear South Jersey is on the rise, that is very true. And of course, as the president of the South Jersey Chamber of Commerce, all we do all day is champion, this area as a great place to move your business, or relocate your business or create a new establishment. But at the end of the day, we have the land, we have plenty of space, less congestion, lower cost of living generally for the state of New Jersey. That's not to say a low cost of living, but we don't have housing options, relatively speaker. And the deeper in South Jersey you fall, the greater the problem is. And then when you get into some communities like Cape May County, you heard some of the stats that Doug just rattled off, that the housing prices are through the roof. And so employers are having a hard time identifying local candidates. We always are champions of businesses in South Jersey hiring from South Jersey, keeping those students that go to Rowan, Stockton, or Rutgers here in South Jersey. There's fewer local candidates because of the high cost of living, high housing costs, and then fewer local candidates again, just generally because you just don't see the opportunity. One good thing I'll just say quickly, and then I'll end on this, is that it is very good for South Jersey to have what we have in place called the New Jersey, Pennsylvania tax reciprocity. We have tax reciprocity with the state of Pennsylvania. So the state of Pennsylvania's income tax rate is 3.07. Here in New Jersey, it's a sliding scale that can go up as high as 10.75. We see New Jersey and South Jersey based businesses looking to recruit from across the Delaware into Pennsylvania and using the Reciprocity Act, which essentially says you pay income taxes in the state you live, not the state you work, as an incentive. This is all a catalyst of the fact that we don't have housing options for employees to move to New Jersey. And even if they did have housing options, it's not affordable for them to move here. So that Reciprocity Act for New Jersey employers ends up being a huge HR incentive for hiring and retaining employees from across the Delaware, which is not good for South Jersey. We want South Jerseyans to hire local.
Yeah, amen to that. And I'll give the chamber credit. I mean, several years ago, that reciprocity was even threatened. And I know the chamber and a lot of folks, both sides of the aisle, really worked hard to preserve that. So certainly you all deserve a lot of credit for that. But, I think, what Doug was saying was right. I mean, so, I'm glad there's more listings. Anecdotally, so I bought my home during the pandemic. My interest rate is 2.5. Now it's what, 7, 8, 9%, Doug?
Yep.
Now we did have a cut this today, which I guess is a good thing, right? Some would argue not as much of a cut that we need. I mean, what do you guys think about that?
It's a good thing, but it takes time to affect the actual mortgages. I mean, they can cut, but I mean, the mortgage rate always lags actually behind the interest rate. So it's a step in the right direction. It will help, but not tomorrow. It's going to take time. And so many, look, you're at a perfect example. If you're at 2.5%, you're not selling your home right now. No. You're kind of interest rate locked, right? Like you aren't looking to move up. Where traditionally someone, I've been in the house for 6, 7 years. That's when we see people starting to look. Well, now the number trends more towards 10 years before they want to look to upgrade their home. And this current interest rates aren't going to help. I mean, there's no reason for you to sell.
Yeah, amen. And everybody's stuck. And even the trying to get, Jeff's folks, members to build more. And I don't know if what you're seeing, Jeff, in kind of your industry, but, anecdotally, I'm seeing a lot of building, particularly in our coastal towns. I mean, just near me, Brigantine, there's always houses going up. Ventnor, Margate, building's just been crazy with residential. But, anecdotally, not as much more mainland or some of our inner county, Cumberland or Burlington or parts of Burlington or things of that nature. But are you seeing that kind of really where, a lot of your members are kind of going towards the coast, you're doing the duplexes, building, rehabbing, and, that's because that's where the money is, but less so on kind of more affordable middle-class housing in the mainland?
I don't know if there's any particular trend that I could talk to. I mean, my members will go to where the opportunities are. And at this point, going to Doug's point, the demand's so high, it's kind of like you build it and they will come. There is a housing need out there. There is we're not going to meet it anytime soon. And you just kind of raised the question about, interest rates and everything. And I put that in the category of one of the external factors that we have no control over. And truth be told, we're probably not getting any big relief in that realm anytime soon. And people got to get used to the new normal. Like, hopefully we'll get to in the 5s, like that's hopeful, like that we could do that. But I don't think we're going to get much below that. That might be the new low point, right? But that's monumental compared to where we were when maybe our parents' generation were buying a house, when a lot of them got in at 13, 14%. Yeah. 6% or 7% is still really good compared to that. No, you know, it's horrible compared to the 2%, but that we're never going to see those kind of set of circumstances. But we can't control those external factors, right? So we have to look at kind of the New Jerseyisms, as I call them. What can we do here on the New Jersey level to make it so that, you know, we have many structural issues in New Jersey we have to deal with: property taxes, high regulatory environment, long development timetables, right? There's a lot of things that we could do here, but to more directly answer your question, we've dug ourselves in a huge hole. You think there's a lot of development going on? Again, we still have a huge supply issue. Yeah. Progressive groups put it out there that we need 200,000 low and moderate income deed restricted units alone, and there's certain a ton of market rate units that are needed to support the construction of those deed restricted units. We have a limited amount of land left. I don't know where we're going to put it all, and we got to get smarter about where we build. But you think there's a lot of building going on. I think we need a heck of a lot more to dig ourselves out of the hole that we have put ourselves in when it comes to underproducing for the last several generations, I'll say.
No, amen to that. And I think we want to talk about kind of some of those things now that have been regulatory burdens for all of you and all of your respective organizations, as well as just hindrances that, you know, we can't control what we do in Washington. We can't control Trenton below, right? And what we can do. But just before we get that, just a quick dovetail for folks that maybe, you know, a lot of lay persons watching or folks who aren't familiar with kind of the nuances of public policy. As I joke, they probably have more exciting things to do than the four of us, right? But, you know, Christina, you know, when we talk about, we're going to talk into kind of some regulatory burden, some things we should change. You know, when it comes to like your members and advocacy, and obviously that's a big thing the chamber has. And if a layperson says, well, you know, what does that look like? You know, I know certainly a lot of your organization is meeting with legislators, testifying, and same thing that certainly Doug and Jeff do. But just kind of give a sense, like if you're a layperson, you're like, well, how do these groups actually help effectuate public policy? What does that look like from your organization's efforts at the chamber in terms of, hey, we need to go fight to preserve the reciprocity between Pennsylvania and New Jersey? What does that look like from your perspective? What tactics have you posed to do that? Oh, I think you're muted there, Christina. There you go. We're doing this live, folks. So there you go. We're doing this live. It's live is the best way.
Sorry about that.
So
good. It depends. It depends on your constituency. It depends on the issue you're advocating for. Being with a chamber of commerce, you tend to be generalists. You have your flower shop on the corner, and you have your large manufacturers, your institutions of higher education, your casinos, and then you have your delis. So everyone has different issues. You know, you led with regulatory burdens. Regulatory burdens impact all walks of life, whether you're a sole proprietor, a small business, a mid-sized business, an anchor institution, you're going to be impacted by regulatory burdens here in the state of New Jersey. And as a chamber, it's our job to articulate the different ways those regulatory burdens are going to impact our members, because it's going to impact a small business much differently than it's going to impact a larger business. Small businesses generally cannot deal with added compliance costs for regulations or the administrative burden that goes into trying to comply. They don't have a team of lawyers, or they can't afford to pay a team of lawyers because maybe they're a micro business, maybe they're a sole proprietor, maybe they are that deli. And so they get themselves into accidental trouble because the state has so many regulatory and administrative hurdles that they have to jump through. Large businesses are a little bit different. You know, when you're facing regulatory burdens or administrative burdens, you know, you're looking at anything from like an increase in capital expenditures to just a slowing down of the cost of doing business generally in the state. As a chamber, it's our job to articulate what these individual businesses' struggles are, bring them to policymakers with real world examples. So they know that that flower shop, that deli, or that large employer are all being impacted, but with tangible examples of how they're being impacted. And at the end of the day, trickling down not just to the business, but also the consumer.
Well, that makes a very good point. I mean, I think Jeff and I were talking at breakfast not too long ago that, a lot of his members, I mean, they don't have time to, even if they're having some sort of big issue, they don't have their own lawyer, they don't have their own
Right.
PR person. I mean, they want to build houses, right, or build apartment buildings. They rely on, you and Doug and Jeff to kind of do that advocacy for them. And I think I think we'd all agree there's a lot of, regulatory burdens. One of the things that's always been a pet peeve of mine, and anybody jump in on this. And I will preface this by saying I consider myself an environmentalist. I believe in climate change. People know what my party affiliation is. So like I'm there. But in particular in New Jersey, it just seems like the environmental burdens between DEP, Pinelands, CAFRA is just brutal at times. And again, you say that and people say, "Oh, Solomon, you're anti-environment." No, I'm not. It just there's a way to be smart in the environmental review. I don't know if anybody wants to jump in on that, but it just seems like, can we make that a little quicker? And we've heard that for years and years and years. And, maybe it has happened, maybe it hasn't, but it just seems like some of those things just take forever and really stifle building. Everyone jump in on that. It's rough. Everybody tee off at once, right?
I mean,
Jeff's
I
way more than anyone. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm the bit on this one. I'm going to take a back seat. Go ahead, Jeff.
There you go.
So thank you. Appreciate the deference. I can speak for days on this. I mean, it is built up to the point where it's really untenable, and it's adding a whole layer of costs and for absolutely no reason. And it's not only adding costs, which of course reflected in the price point eventually in the rental units or the home ownership units that my members are building, but it's also serving as a disincentive to attract new capital here in New Jersey. When new capital comes in and they ask maybe some lawyers or some consultants, when can I possibly, get a shovel in the ground and get my project built? And they get told 3, maybe 4 years from now, they take their money and they go elsewhere. They find a state that's more welcoming. And that hurts New Jersey overall. We need money. We need to be considered an attractive place to invest money in. And just DEP alone could add years to a project.
Yeah,
just that alone, and that's on top of any kind of county level permits or the local land use process could sometimes take years to get through, and robust public hearings. And when you face those kind of environments and those kind of costs and the uncertainty, right, that you may not even get to yes after you invest all that money. Yeah. It's really hard to kind of psychologically make New Jersey as an attractive place to do business, right? In your mind, like there are other better places to try to maybe invest your money. So yeah.
Well, especially too, I mean, look, again, people hear that and they go, "Oh, no environmental review. Y'all want to pollute rivers and all that sort of stuff," which no, we don't. I think, can we get back the pendulum to a happy medium where we should do environmental review? Obviously, I live right near the coast. Clearly, sea level rise is a real thing. And, climate change is man-made and real. But, how do we have it where if instead of the environmental review taking 2 years, could it take 6 months, right? Probably not even as quick as your members would like, but can we at least just kind of get things moving? I mean, Doug, what are you hearing when you're at your realtors conference or having a cocktail with some of your members? What are you hearing on that end in terms of things that are kind of in their craw that they're trying to fix to kind of speed things up from the housing development side?
So it's a little more different for my members. I mean, we don't have the same regulatory burdens that obviously our friends at the builders do, or in the South Jersey Chamber. It's just different for us, right? Like, we're trying to sell the homes that have already been built. But what we always have a difficult time sort of struggling with is the need for affordable housing versus housing affordability. Those are two very separate things. And I think too long right now, the affordable housing conversation that takes place is we see what's being done. And this is more, I think, probably a North Jersey thing, because it's less land opportunity, where you just have building going on in downtowns and there's apartments being built in places that no one ever thought could ever go. And most individuals think that their house should have been the last one that was built and the signed, door should have been locked after them. And we struggle with that because, one of the things we do is we also sell towns, we sell municipalities, and we sell the benefits of it. And now you're seeing downtowns completely changed. And in a previous life, I served on my town council and as mayor, and we would grapple with this. We would say, like, obviously there's a need for housing, but at what cost to your town? And unless you can do things like add transportation, mass transit, or make sure there's jobs available, just by plunking down affordable housing in the middle of it doesn't necessarily help the people that are trying to live there and get there, and just make a community what it is. So again, not the same regulatory burdens that the others face, but it all just goes into affecting housing affordability. I mean, day to day. And Jeff and I were just complaining, I was complaining about this with him, I think this morning, where, your insurance rates are going up 20 to 30% every year. My property taxes went up 10%, even though it's supposed to be capped, but because of something with the schools, it went up by that. Then my cable bill goes up by 15%. Everything, it's nickel and diming. And now suddenly someone who was locked into a mortgage that they could afford, they're going, why did my energy costs just go up by 30%? What was that? So there's a growing frustration again with my members about how do they help their clients get into a home and stay there. And the dream of home ownership is never, in my opinion, been farther out of reach for the average New Jerseyan, and that scares the hell out of me. It really does, and it's a shame.
No, agree. Listen, as a obviously Gen Z is a new hip crowd, but as a aging millennial, I'll say that it's incredibly difficult. Either whether you're your early 30s or even late 20s, and let's say you just got married and trying to raise a kid, and how the hell can you afford houses that a few years ago were 3, 4, or 500? Now they're 6, 7, 8, and it's like, good Lord, how it's impossible, right? I mean,
with crushing student loan debts on top of it. And that's the other thing that we sometimes forget is that people are walking out of school with $100,000 in student loans, and they're paying $1,400-$1,500 extra a month. Well, that's coming out of something, and that's not going to go towards your mortgage anymore. And that's not changing anytime soon.
No, unfortunately, no. But I know there's a couple specific things that I'll probably have Doug and Jeff make their hair catch fire. But before we get to that, a little tease. So Christina, obviously we have a lot. We could spend 8 hours dealing with this, and there's a lot we need to change in New Jersey, right? And I know, the whole abundance thing is big, right, in public policy, and, how do we streamline things, make it better, provide for our communities and things of that nature. But when you have so many issues, we'll talk a little bit about the PACT rules, obviously the so-called mansion tax that was in the budget, clearly just lowering the cost of doing business. When you look at the chamber perspective, you could throw everything at policymakers and say, hey, do this. But, how do you pick and choose? How do you internally sense, okay, we're going to focus on, state budgets coming up. We're going to focus on, we have 30 things we could do. We're going to focus on these 3 things. Talk a little bit kind of that deliberation. How does that work? Is it what's feasible? Is it we're going to put all of our stock here, or maybe next year do this? When you try to chip away at those regulatory burdens, how do you kind of, God bless you all doing great work, how do you kind of get through that Gordian knot and untie it? Oh, you're muted again, Christina. Bust your chops. You're good. You're good.
Okay. So first and foremost, I'm sorry, everyone. First and foremost, we're going to listen to our members. We're going to hear what they want us to weigh in on, and we proactively reach out to our membership base all the time and say, what are your major concerns? Here's the budget. This is our analysis of it. What is most concerning to you? And we always hear from our members. From the South Jersey Chamber's perspective, we always kind of have an eye towards a few very specific things. First and foremost being the gaming industry, and if our casinos in Atlantic City are going to be impacted negatively or positively in the state budget. If it's something negative, we're going to be vociferously fighting that, because we need to make sure our casinos in Atlantic City remain viable, and those 23,000 jobs that are all South Jersey jobs remain. But there's other things that are just overarching to the region and its economic vitality, just generally speaking, that we're going to weigh in on. And a great example of that was in this last budget cycle with transportation. As I mentioned earlier, we all know that, we lack mass transit options. So we decided to really dive in on that issue this budget cycle. As quickly as possible, I'll just say that last year, Governor Murphy increased the corporate business tax in New Jersey for our largest businesses. And so now they are paying an extra 2.5%. And all of that money generated was going to go to New Jersey Transit, which needs fixing. New Jersey Transit is in trouble. Everyone knows that. Our issue in South Jersey is that New Jersey Transit doesn't serve most of South Jersey. And so why should South Jersey businesses be forced to pay a tax for services that their employees do not get to utilize regularly? We flipped that around this budget cycle and approached the governor's office with the help of Majority Leader Greenwald and a few other legislators and said, listen, this is a pure fairness argument here in South Jersey. The corporation business tax and then the corporate transit fee on top of that are taxing South Jersey businesses unfairly. We deserve some of that money back dedicated for South Jersey mass transportation. That was an argument that resonated with Governor Murphy. We're really grateful to him. And as a result, we are receiving in South Jersey $5 million for micro transit grids to be set up around South Jersey in low service areas. So sometimes it's just a matter of picking the issues that are really going to resonate. They resonate with the membership first and foremost. They're going to benefit the majority of South Jersey in one way or the other. And with something like the corporation transit fee and that fairness argument, that was a huge winning argument. And when you have someone like Majority Leader Greenwald in your back pocket saying to the governor, listen, this is cut and dry, very simple, a fairness argument, South Jersey deserves this. We ended up getting a big win for the region. That was a good win for our budget in what was a pretty overall bad budget cycle.
And it's funny because talk about transportation. To Doug's point, I mean, besides everything else, the cost of not only new cars but used cars. I mean, you live somewhere, but if you can't go anywhere, and a lot of folks, despite even pandemic-wise, people kind of fled away from the cities, want to go back to suburban life. People still like to walk to things, right? And if they can walk or take a light rail or take the Patco or take the path or whatever, I mean, people like doing that. They don't want to drive a car every single way, and even if you could go somewhere, or if you can't afford a car, you need to get to your job. And I know the microtransit stuff is critical, especially in Camden, or what they're doing now between Vineland and Atlantic City is critical because, okay, you got a job in the casino industry, but if you can't drive or get to the casinos, then what's the point, and you won't have the ability to live where you want to live.
Shout out to Senator Testa on that, because that was a line that people have been advocating for. Former Senate President Steve Sweeney is advocating for it for years and years. And Senator Mike Testa in the 1st District got that done for the casino workers specifically that, commute from Vineland to Atlantic City. So kudos really goes to him for that advocacy and being successful in that.
Yeah, amen to that. Well, so Jeff, let's talk about your favorite topic, the PACT rules, briefly. Again, I think we all agree, the environment is real. Sea level rise is real. There's certainly parts of our barrier islands that, in 30, 40 years could be underwater and are going to be uninhabitable. But, there's been a push lately, especially by the DEP, to kind of change, to transform development in our coastal areas. People love to live near the beach. That's just a fact of life. That'll always be a fact of life. People want to live on the coast. But, clearly that has been an issue that your organization's really been on top of that could adversely affect housing in those coastal areas. Talk a little bit about that.
So it's going to be a little bit difficult to kind of summarize things because what DEP has proposed is a 1,000-page rule proposal that's going to significantly regulate the land in a new way here in New Jersey. They're changing the paradigm and making kind of extreme projections and to the year 2100 here in New Jersey. And they're going to kind of hold our land use decisions to what they think New Jersey is going to look like in the year 2100. And we think that's a little bit extreme for New Jersey. We think it's also a little, I would say, myopic, or a little bit fails to account for many things that are going to happen if these rules take effect. It's going to devalue property in certain areas. I mean, it's going to make it harder to recover from storms. If you shut down development in a particular area, it's going to make it harder for those communities to harden and deal with not only the kind of maybe water issues they're dealing with now, maybe stormwater, or wastewater issues now, but never mind the incremental change that is coming with climate change. And the Builders Association, me personally, we firmly believe change is happening. It's going to impact New Jersey, but at the same time, we got to be realistic about how fast that change is coming, how fast we have to respond to it, and the different strategies that we use, not only to deal with the incremental change that's coming with climate change and the weather patterns that may be changing, but we have to balance that with all the other public priorities that we have in this state. Not only housing, but we have warehousing needs, we have transportation needs, we have a lot of different needs to balance. And I think that DEP rule proposal just kind of ignores all of the other public policies and just looks to put land in the lockbox and ignores everything else we have to deal with as a state.
Yeah, and it goes back to at least when I was growing up. So obviously living right out, growing up, both parents worked in the casino industry. For example, the city of Brigantine, that used to be a middle class area where casino workers lived. That they could afford to live there. It was mostly middle class housing, right? Then it's become, are you going to get to a point with some of these rules, Jeff, where some of these coastal areas, it's only the ultra rich that can live there, and you're pricing people out, or it's second homeowners, which again is, I guess the town's like it, right? It's a rateable. There's no kids in the school district, what have you. But are you pricing folks out of these areas, which historically for decades were good middle class areas?
Well, Mike, let's just kind of make a comparison between what's happening in Atlantic City. Right now, they have stormwater issues there. They have really old infrastructure. They have sunny day flooding, I think, at times, right, where it's not even raining and they're getting flooding. And it's a low-lying area. But are we going to just kind of give up and retreat from Atlantic City? Yeah. I mean, there are other areas of the country that have dealt with this issue for a long time. New Orleans is below sea level. And barring one, catastrophic, failure of that system, they've been able to operate there and have a thriving community there for decades, right? I mean, New Orleans have made massive investments in their infrastructure in order to deal with what's happening in those parts of the world. And New Jersey, again, has, according to DEP, has 75 years to the year 2100 to incrementally deal with this. And it could be dealing with it on a local level. It could deal with new development, maybe absorbing some of the impacts. There's a park in Hoboken that takes on a significant amount of stormwater. It addresses their existing stormwater needs. There's a lot of kind of large and small stuff that we could do as this, as we again deal with this problem over a long term. And again, no denying that we do have to deal with it.
And listen, I'm a beach replenishment guy. We're actually going to do our next roundtable in 2 weeks on beach replenishment with our friends at Jersey Shore Partnership. So, count me in on it's one of those ways to protect our coast and encourage folks to live here. Doug, let's talk about the budget that was passed in June. Obviously, a lot of talk in the Twitter space of the dreaded mansion tax. And as I joked, I live in a 1,200 square foot house in Galloway. I don't have to worry about a mansion tax here. But I know the state budget did do a companion bill about that so-called tax and transferring who pays that tax. So you talk a little bit about that, and I'm sure that was, one area that your members are probably a little grumpy at, rightfully so.
Yeah, they're downright upset. But something to remember too is my guys aren't the ones paying it. It's the consumer. It's that buyer that's paying it, or in our case, it's the seller. So for what most people may or may not know, going back to 2004, a tax was put on, a 1% at the time called mansion tax, on property sold over $1 million. But back then, the average home was selling for $300,000. So when you thought about that $1 million home back in 2003, I thought of a real mansion. That was something that was like the dream. You want to get to that. Now I have communities up and down New Jersey that the average home sale is over $1 million. So in this year's budget, the governor originally proposed putting a new tax or an additional 1% on homes over $1 million, so bringing it up to 2%, plus the traditional realty transfer fee that was already being paid. So you're looking about roughly 3% of the home sale was going to go into this tax structure. That would have represented roughly 18% of New Jerseyans would have been affected by that today. But as you heard me say earlier, we're going up by 10% increases in value every year. So although your home may not be valued at $1 million today, guess what? It could be. Would we think most homes would have doubled since the pandemic? But some of them have. So that's what I kept warning people, is that although you think doesn't affect you now, it certainly could. Where did we end up at the actual end of the day of the budget? The script was sort of flipped a little bit. Traditionally, it was the buyer who was paying this 1% because they were buying this home. Right now, buyers have no ability. They're looking into the couch cushions, trying to get enough down payment assistance to try to get into their home. So now it's been transferred to the seller. The seller pays all this mansion tax, we're saying, but also on properties from 1 to 2, it did not change. Properties 2 plus, they did see the increase on how much they'd be paying, and it's a tiered system now, going up to 3.5 million and capping out of what they pay over that. But it's not just mansions; it's commercial properties as well. In fact, the only thing, and this is where my dear friend Jeff and I will disagree, the only 3 places that are exempt from this are industrial parks, apartment buildings, and warehouses. Why warehouses are exempt from having to pay any sort of additional tax burden is beyond me. When I'm looking at residents who are the ones footing the bill, and I'm sorry, I don't think there's any sympathy for most for warehouses in New Jersey, especially if you pick up a newspaper right now. Most municipalities are fighting like hell to stop them from being built than anything. And again, I apologize to my friends at the builders in the chamber, because I know sometimes we like those things being built, but the reality is, why are traditional residents the ones footing these bills right now and affecting the realty transfer fee? Because every dollar I increase a home sale, it's a trickle down, because the person at the next level down, they do need to purchase that property. They need to purchase the next property up, and it affects everyone top to bottom the whole way through.
Yeah, you make a good point. Certainly want to bring Christina in the conversation. I mean, clearly, that effect on commercial properties where, look, we are trying to redevelop commercial properties, whether you mentioned warehouses near me, that the old Langston racetrack, Amazon is looking to go there to build a warehouse, or one of the things research we worked on is repurposing our malls, where you look at the Morristown Mall where Cooper took that over and things like that. And, if now it's a little harder to do business on commercial properties, Christina, are we really shooting ourselves in the foot where, okay, what you said, 1%, I mean, it's not huge, but still, if you're working in an industry on the margins, like Doug is saying, it hurts, right? It's just yet another, what point does the, what needle breaks the camel's back, and then it impedes, the opportunity to do business in South Jersey. You're muted. Just leave yourself unmuted, Christina. We're all friends here.
All right. How about now?
You're good.
Okay. So you hit the nail on the head. It's not just one thing. It's the layering. And focus obviously on South Jersey. What I care most about is what's happening in Pennsylvania and what's happening in Delaware, because they're our top competitors for our commercial properties. So yeah, it may just be 1% here or there when we're looking at real estate specifically, but that's on top of Pennsylvania, whose corporate business tax is 7.99 and declining, right? You have a Democratic governor saying we need to lower the corporate business tax to make us more business friendly in Pennsylvania. Our corporate business tax can be as high as 10.75 in the state of New Jersey. And in Delaware, the corporate business tax is close to 9%. It's about 8.7%. Our real estate taxes have just gone up. Sales tax matters to consumers. Delaware has no sales tax. Pennsylvania has 6% sales tax. We have just over 6%. We are still the highest. You look at our income taxes. Our income taxes are far higher than Pennsylvania, who's a 3.07% rate, and Delaware, that's a sliding scale that goes as high as 6.6%. At the end of the day, we continue to tax and tax and tax, and it makes our residents not want to live here, and it makes our businesses not want to stay here, or they do want to stay here and they can't afford to stay here. With the CBT that taps out as high as it does, especially for our larger earners, for our income tax being as high as it is, and a sales tax, real estate taxes, and we're not even getting into all the other things that we're faced with, including increased energy costs and the like. So it's not a good place to do business, but as the Chamber of Commerce, I hate being overly negative. South Jersey is the only place left in the state of New Jersey where you have the land. Doug keeps talking about being built out. No, we have it. We have it here in South Jersey. We have plenty of space. Come to South Jersey. We just need to make sure when we are redeveloping our abandoned malls, we're making sure that we are putting, a housing component in it and an affordable housing component in it. I don't know if we're going to talk about this or not, but you look at some of the tax incentive programs that NJEDA has put forth, like the Aspire program, they're intertwining, obviously, housing into these projects, especially the larger transformational projects. That's really important to do and a good thing to incorporate. But at the end of the day, a lot of those incentives aren't going to apply to South Jersey. That's a story for another day. But
no,
So,
it's a good.
and I just
Oh, go
wanted to
ahead,
add,
please.
you don't
Yeah.
mind me jumping in one thing. So just on a $5 million property, which seems expensive, but if you know Cape May, all of Cape May, the shore areas there, Atlantic, there's so many shore communities. A $5 million property isn't crazy. They're going to pay $232,000 to transfer the deed.
Wow.
So that's a crazy number, but that's on again, that's residential and commercial. Commercial property selling for 5 million isn't crazy at all. So when you're talking about those numbers, this is real money that you have people making decisions about. I want to move a business to New Jersey. I want to invest in New Jersey. I want to buy a house in New Jersey. And you're telling me I'm going to be paying almost $250,000 for the right to transfer the deed. That's crazy. And it's punitive now. It's got to the point where it's actually punitive to say, I want to invest in New Jersey, and not just South Jersey, North Jersey, Central Jersey. It's punitive at those numbers. And again, South Jersey, it's a little easier to get into the marketplace. It's because it's a little more affordable because you do still have the land. But in North Jersey, $5 million is a drop in the bucket for some of this stuff. And you're forking over $250,000 just to transfer a deed. It's unfair.
No, you make a good point, and clearly one of the things we want to do is kind of talk about some ideas of how do we actually fix the problem, right? Aside from the regulatory burdens, what things can, like Christina mentioned, the tax incentives. What can we do to incentivize not only housing development, but just overall development? That housing's tied into public transportation, is tied into a business climate. It's not all in a silo. We actually got a question on one of our social media channels about exclusionary zoning. And the person notes this idea about everybody talks about more affordable housing, but we have, but with NIMBY, for those not in my backyard, it makes getting any housing projects difficult to get off the ground. So everybody want to jump in on that? I mean, it is, we do hear it a lot. And, I think, Doug mentioned it earlier, this idea that there has been a habit of haphazardly putting housing projects or housing developments, I should say, just in random spots, right? But how do you counteract this idea? Or Jeff, your members go to before a planning or zoning board or what have you, and you get all the neighbors going to ruin the quality of life or this and that or the other. I mean, does there have to be, based on the question, does there have to be more of a top-down approach from the state, right? I'll bring the example. This is not apples and oranges, but when the whole debacle was going on with wind energy in Ocean City, and the state did the law where, frankly, they could, basically jump over Ocean City for the permitting to run the transmission lines through. Obviously, it was a moot point because it didn't happen, but does there have to be more of that? Quite frankly, again, it's not very representative government, but is it more we just got to get stuff done to get some more housing built? So maybe we want to take a swing at that one.
I'll start by talking about the DEP PAC regulations, and that's a prime example of when government just has the ability to say no. And to your question, they rarely tell us where yes is, right? Tell us where they want us to grow. Where do you want us to put the housing? I bet you ask that question, you get a lot of different answers from a lot of different elected officials. And again, there is no plan here in New Jersey. Unfortunately, we have a history of home rule. I don't know why we I would say, fell into that trap. I don't know why we continue to stay in that trap. I think we have to have a conversation about acknowledging that that's not the way to build our way out of, again, the undersupply problem that we have here in New Jersey. It hasn't been an effective way to kind of plan for the future of New Jersey. And I think we could do better.
Anybody else want to jump on that? Christina, Doug? Look, anecdotally, I would say that it does seem like, whether, again, I'm not a realtor, I'm not a business guy, and I'm certainly not a builder or realtor, but a lot of times with some of these housing projects, it does seem like you're playing Russian roulette, right? If you have a good town to work with, regardless of party, you can get your development done a little easier. If you're in a town that's just going to oppose everything and you have to pay up the nose for a land use attorney or things like that, it kind of makes it difficult, right? Because then, in an odd sense, we are picking and choosing winners and losers rather than everybody should get a fair shake. Everyone jump in on that. I can see why people get frustrated about the NIMBYs kind of, and again, not discounting people who have legitimate concerns, but we have a problem, we try to deal with it, and we can't get stuff built. Then, do we have to look in the mirror as the public a little bit and say, hey, we might be part of the problem here?
Yeah, I think Jeff nailed it, or before, when he said, where are you supposed to build? Like, there's not the yes, build here situation. And, I remember when I first started the association in 2003, Governor McGreevy put out this map of where you were supposed to be able to build and not build. Well, all the areas in red is where you couldn't. And it became known as the big red map because there was no opportunities to build anywhere in New Jersey. And the sins that we committed back in 2003 is what's biting us today. And Jeff mentioned it too. Like, we have not been catching up with the demand for housing for decades now. And our chickens came home to roost. It's a reality now. So I know it's not a direct answer to your question, but there's just no, if we don't fix what we're doing today and plan and start getting these things done, we're going to have a whole nother generation in 10 years talking and say, I can't believe housing went up by triple the cost than what it was.
Yeah. And then, Mike, you're kind of going back to your question, then we defer back to local rule, and some towns don't want the growth. I don't know who gets to decide that town's opinions. I guess it's the local elected officials, it's the local planning boards, but guess what? Those individuals change over time, right? I mean, there are a lot of local elections that are being decided on pro or anti-development slates at this point. And I don't know if that's a way to plan for our future, which is, the latest round of elections decides our 20-year plan on housing or economic. I don't know if that's the best way to decide our future. But, I know that home rule deciding this level is not going to address our systemic issues. In fact, I argue it's what has caused many of them. And it's not just housing undersupply issues, it's other negative impacts that have affected our state, like inequality in educational opportunities, because some have been excluded from good school districts, right? There are ripple effects to these, as Doug said, mistakes that we made a long time ago that we're kind of continuing to repeat the pattern.
Yeah. Oh, agreed. Got another question actually on X or Twitter. I still call it Twitter, so certainly keep them coming. Are there any proposals to tie EDA tax incentives to other community benefits such as housing or transportation? Person goes on to mention Camden, a lot of development on the waterfront. Other areas of the city need attention. I don't know. You would probably better than me, Christine. Obviously, Camden's doing great monumental things, but when it comes to those, and I know it's a very broad question, we don't have a lot of time, but in terms of those EDA tax incentives, Aspire or the other one whose name escapes me, are there any attachments to either housing or certain community benefits aside from the project itself? Obviously, is a community benefit, but are there any kind of strings attached, or could there be strings attached to housing or transportation or things of that sort?
For sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yes, the Aspire program, as I mentioned before, has tie-ins specifically for housing, specifically for affordable housing, especially in these transformational projects. So you all may remember when we were all advocating, the chamber aggressively, to bring the 76ers arena to Camden. That it was a project that was going to be deemed a transformational project that was going to get an Aspire tax credit should it come here. That was going to be mixed use development, housing, commercial, retail, and obviously the arena and some things to go along with that, parking and the like. So EDA has incentives in place that specifically benefit larger larger projects. I will say this, we are in the last final months of the Murphy administration. I was just in a meeting in the city of Camden with the governor, with Tim Sullivan, the CEO of NJEDA. And this is a subject that's consistently brought up. It's that we need new incentives now for the smaller businesses to be able to grow and thrive, because the smaller businesses are your dry cleaners, they are your daycares, they are your coffee shops. They're all the things you need to make those thousands of employees that come into work at American Water and Campbell's and Subaru want to live and reside in the city. Because no one wants to build housing if no one's going to want to live in the city, because they don't have those small businesses there to rely on. And those small businesses need incentives. What's going to be done in the final months of the Murphy administration? Candidly, probably nothing, right? We are in a lame duck administration. We are going to have a new governor come January 20th. And it's really then that we have to start looking and beating the drum with he or she, whoever our next governor is, and saying we really need to focus on incentives for the smallest of the small businesses so we can help those outside of the waterfront areas like in Camden.
Yeah. Now, I think the one thing I'm going to do, lame duck, is to raise the mansion tax just to piss Doug off, right? No, I'm teasing. Now, as we wrap up here, and I really appreciate our panel taking the time. There are more exciting things to do on a Wednesday night than chat with me, but I really appreciate it. Certainly learned a lot, and we'll talk at the end about how you can all stay connected to these three great organizations. But, kind of either if it's in lame duck or kind of first, second half of, first, second quarter of 2026 with the new administration, maybe just go around briefly. What's one thing that either your organization is going to work on or you're going to or pay attention to, either in terms of fixing regulatory burden or frankly creating a new incentive? Is there any one or two things that your group specifically is going to work on? Maybe we'll start with Jeff and go around the horn here.
Number one priority, at least for Maine lame duck, is revisiting the mansion tax. Really is. I think it was a really poor public policy. It just added to, New Jersey as a place to be unfriendly for business. It's going to stifle housing development. A lot of my members are looking at purchase stranded commercial assets and maybe convert them into residential. We just put a 3.5% tax on that. That's a movement, a trend that's happening around the country. We should be embracing that here instead of putting a tax on it. I don't know why they decided to do that when they're sitting on a significant surplus this year. So that's going to be number one priority. And of course, I can name another 50 because we dug that deep of a hole and we got a lot of work to figure a way out of it. So, but I don't know if these are closing comments. Mike, are we at that point?
We'll let Doug and Christina chime in. Yeah, I will say this. Christina mentioned earlier about the corporate business tax. I'm certainly glad Christina's efforts to get some South Jersey dollars in, and I will get in trouble for saying this, but it is frustrating, right? Because we were told that the corporate business tax would sunset. We would allow it to sunset. It ended up not sunsetting. Same thing with back in the day. We told public employees, we're going to fund your pension, don't worry about it. That didn't happen either. So I would say respectfully, we as a state need to get better at holding our promises, because we kind of frankly said one thing to this community, did another. We said one thing to public employees, did another. And it's not again, no blame on one administration. It's over the decades, but that's just an editorial comment from me of we got to get our act together, folks. Doug, what do you focus on, either in lame duck or new legislative session next year?
Same exact thing, repealing the draconian real estate transfer mansion tax that they just put in place. I think it's absolutely, as Jeff said, bad public policy. We're seeing the effects on both the commercial and residential. And, we're not going to tax our way to housing affordability. And this is just a perfect example of us dropping the ball collectively as a state. So we need to go back and revisit this and find ways that we can fine tune it and help people get into housing and not stifle it.
I'll just say, do you think you at the point where you all have enough data points to make the case, or are we still kind of, it went effect, July 10th or something like that? Do you think you have enough data points to make the case articulately enough?
Yeah, I do. I think anecdotally, I've got more examples of people calling me saying, hey, just so you know, they dropped the price to 1.999 million or 999,000 to get around any extra tax that's taken place. And it's just stifling the marketplace. We're hearing people saying, you know what, I'm going to hold off and not sell right now. Or, you know what, now I'm not going to be, oh, I'm going to buy the property, but I can't redo the carpets. I'm going to hold off on doing the pool now. And like all of that affects the overall economy. When I say I'm not going to put in a new backyard, I'm going to hold off on the landscaping. There's so many jobs that are affected by this. And, you know, I think it's just short term. We needed the revenue because we panicked. We thought all these programs from the Trump administration were going to get yanked and the money wasn't going to come back to the state. So I think there was an abject panic that we were going to have to backfill. I think collectively we can all agree we didn't see that happen on the level that we were fearful of. Not saying it still can't. So there's a lot more surplus currently than I think we thought was going to be there. So I think it's just time for us to go back, look at the real numbers, say, all right, we're 3 months out, we're 4 months out. At that point, 6 months out, let's see what we can do to help those businesses and help those residents stay in New Jersey and get this economy back to where we need it to be.
Yeah, and Christine, I'll ask you certainly what you're looking at next year, and I'll throw one thing at you, and I don't want to. Sorry to keep you guys after overtime here, but we appreciate it. You know, I am curious too, and feel free to answer. You know what you would do, but regardless of who wins the governor's race, presumably we're going to have a new head of the EDA, right? Next governor's going to get their own person. Tim Sullivan, I'm sure, will, go consult and make a ton of money, and more power to him. But this idea of either does a new governor either continue those tax incentives, frankly, does a new governor shrink it? What does Choose New Jersey look like, regardless of who wins this thing, Chitterelli or Sherrill? And is that going to be part of your as part of the South Jersey Chamber of Commerce, Southern New Jersey's efforts of like, hey, let's preserve, let's fix some of the things that didn't work, but let's preserve some of this good stuff. And is it kind of I don't want to say a re-education, because certainly both are qualified, whoever you're supporting, but is it, let's say there's a new EDA, there's a new head of EDA. How much of a learning curves are going to be? Is that person going to lose 6-8 months? Is it going to be the and I mean this in a good way, the bureaucratic staff will continue to make sure the wheels are turning there? I mean, how does that affect the great work that you do, where it may not be full steam ahead with the new administration, regardless of who wins? Christina, God bless you.
It's okay. It takes a second.
There you go. Oh, it does. Okay. I was about to. Yeah, you're good.
It just takes a second.
I'm sorry.
I don't know why.
That was my bad.
I don't know why, but it just does. It depends on the candidate. It depends on how well versed they are coming in the door. Are they already familiar with EDA's offerings? Are they not? Are they familiar with New Jersey government? Just generally. Are they not? These are the fundamental things that we're going to look for, and regardless, we are going to be advocating in a new administration for better incentive programs. Not that what we have now is bad, but certainly better incentive programs for our small businesses and especially in underserved areas. That is a huge priority for our chambers. We need our main streets to be strong, and we need our underserved areas to lift up. The nice thing about this learning curve with whoever's going to be next in the EDA is all these incentive programs actually start in the legislature. So they start with our state legislature. Someone has to introduce a bill. It's got to go through both houses. We'll be lobbying and advocating heavily for changes that help the community's unique, economic challenges. That gives whoever is next in the EDA some time to get up to speed, on what he or she wants to see out of these incentive programs. Governor Murphy had very different ideas than Governor Christie. Some were good, some were bad. No one's perfect. And the same will be with whoever our next governor is. And so it's a wait and see, but we'll certainly be very involved because it's critically and fundamentally important to everyone in the chamber's membership that we have incentive programs to offset that high cost of living in property taxes and all the other taxes I rattled off earlier. And one thing I will say quickly is, as far as our lame duck priorities go, number one is always protecting the 23,000 casino workers, because lame duck is always ripe for sneaking in legislation that hurts Atlantic City's casinos. So that is where our eyes are always going into any lame duck, because it's always a sneaky time. So that is always our top priority, going into lame duck. And long term for our chamber, as many of the other business associations, is getting back to that corporation business tax, is getting that lowered. Not only did it not be retroactive, it went retroactive. Like the corporate transit fee went backwards to January of 2024 to collect. It made us project more revenue and therefore get some for South Jersey. But at the end of the day, it needs to go away. And we need to mirror what Governor Shapiro is doing in Pennsylvania. We have an example right across the Delaware River, and that's what we're going to be advocating for with our next governor.
And I will note that I certainly have, because I was waiting for my phone to blow up from my friends at both camps saying, "Oh, Suleiman, you jerk." No, but both candidates I'm sure, will put a qualified person at the EDA. So I'll make that before I get lit up by both my friends in both camps. But listen, this was really tremendous conversation. We really appreciate Jeff and Doug and Christina joining us. Just go around. How can folks follow you all? How can folks follow your respective organizations? Plug your social, any events or happenings coming up. Now's time. Jeff, how can we connect with you folks at the Builders Association?
So web address is njba.org. If you wanted to connect with me personally, it's jeff@njba.org. You can see our events calendar up there, but feel free to reach out and connect. And Mike, I forgot to say thank you for hosting this and for having us. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to come on, chat with you, with my wonderful colleagues, Doug and Christina, and to most importantly kind of have a conversation about what's important here in New Jersey and share my industry's perspective on how to kind of make New Jersey a better place. So appreciate it.
No, we all have the same goal, and I really appreciate your saying that. And Doug, how can folks keep in touch with the Realtor Association? Plug your social. Maybe you guys are on Snapchat soon. I don't know, but what do you got cooking at the Realtors?
We're everywhere. So it's NJ Realtor on Facebook. It's NJ Realtor on Instagram. NJRealtor.com. You can find us all those places. If you're looking for me, CEO at NJ Realtors, NJRealtor.com as well. So you can get a hold of us there. But I want to echo what Jeff said. Thank you for having the conversation. I think this is sorely missed, where groups can get together, just have the conversation. We're not going to see eye to eye on everything, and that's what it's supposed to be, right? We have a discussion and we try to find great policy places where we can all work together and get the state going in the direction that we all want to. I mean, I love New Jersey. I'm born and raised, and I plan on dying here. So let's keep this thing doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Amen. Not anytime soon, but amen.
No, not yet.
Hey, Christina, plug what's going on at the chamber. I mean, talk about a chamber who is busy. Ton of events. You're actually hosting both gubernatorial candidates next month. How can we connect with the chamber and any upcoming events you want to plug? Not yet, but try again.
Not now.
There you go.
Okay, great. The most bizarre thing ever. So you connect with the chamber at www.chambersnj, like Southern New Jersey.com. So chambersnj.com. We're on social media, Facebook and LinkedIn at Chamber of Commerce, Southern New Jersey. And we are on Instagram and Twitter, or X, at CCS as in Sam, NJ, Chamber of Commerce, Southern New Jersey, CCSNJ. If you want to follow me, I'm on Twitter at CG as in George Renna. And also I'm on LinkedIn, of course, Christina Renna. And yes, we have about 35 events between now and the end of the year. We're a very active Chamber of Commerce, to say the least. We are hosting both Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill and Republican gubernatorial candidate Jack Chittarelli on October 10th. Well, it'll be over in December. October 10th at Resorts Casino in Atlantic City. It's a forum where both are speaking and taking questions. And so if anyone's interested in learning more about that, check us out on the website, or you know where to follow me. And Michael, thank you for having us. Always fun chatting with you and my friends.
Likewise. And I'll put, amen to that. And I'll put a plug in. Our next virtual roundtable will be in 2 weeks, Wednesday, October 1. 5 o'clock, streaming on all these platforms. We're going to be talking beach replenishment. We've got folks from the Stephen Institute, Monmouth University, as well as Jersey Shore Partnership, which really does some great work all along the coast about beach replenishment, not only the environmental benefits of that, but just the economic benefits of how important our coast is, whether you're in Long Branch, Atlantic City, Wildwood. It's really a great organization. Grace Hanlon, we've partnered with her, really does a tremendous job. So we're going to talk with her in 2 weeks about how important beach replenishment is. Hopefully we'll get some federal dollars for that soon. This is the first year we didn't get federal dollars for it. But
well, the money comes from the realty transfer fee, just so you know. So that comes directly from the realty transfer fee for beach replenishment. So you're welcome.
There you go. All right, listen, everything is connected. I think that's the goal of this. It's nothing's in a silo, but we really appreciate everybody watching. Thank you to our panelists. We all owe you a beer at the league when we see you. And